The morning sky above Boston was thick with storm clouds, and the streets glistened under a relentless drizzle. Cars honked impatiently, splashing water across the sidewalks as commuters hurried to escape the rain. Amid the chaos, Ethan Carter pressed forward, clutching a worn leather briefcase under his arm. His shirt clung to his chest, damp with rain, and his breath came in sharp bursts. Today was supposed to be the turning point of his life, a job interview that could change everything. Beside him, his 7-year-old daughter Lily trotted to keep pace, her small hand wrapped tightly around his. She wore a faded pink raincoat with buttons shaped like daisies, the hood pulled snug over her head. Her school bag bounced against her back with every step. "Daddy, are we late?" she asked, her voice barely audible over the traffic. Ethan forced a smile, though his eyes betrayed the anxiety boiling inside. "Not if we keep moving, sweetheart." Just a little further. He had rehearsed this morning 100 times in his head: wake Lily up, drop her at school, head straight downtown for the most important interview of his career. But the rain, the traffic, and the delays on the subway had conspired against him. The margin for error had already vanished. As they turned onto Tremont Street, Ethan caught sight of the towering glass building in the distance, its steel facade gleaming through the rain. That was his destination. His heartbeat quickened. He tightened his grip on Lily's hand and quickened his stride. But fate, as it often does, had other plans. At the corner of the intersection, a sleek black Mercedes was pulled awkwardly to the side of the road, hazard lights flashing. The car's right front tire sagged against the asphalt, completely flat. Beside it stood a woman, her platinum blonde hair plastered to her cheeks by the rain, her heels sinking into the wet pavement. She waved her arms in frustration, trying to hail passing taxis, but none slowed down. Ethan would have walked past. He wanted to walk past. Every fiber of his being screamed that he couldn't afford another delay. But then Lily tugged at his sleeve. "Daddy, she looks like she needs help." Ethan hesitated, torn between the promise of a better future and the instinct that had guided him his whole life. The instinct to help, no matter the cost. He saw the woman glance at her phone, lips moving in silent curses, eyes flashing with a mixture of fear and rage. Something in her face, beneath the veneer of power, reminded him of a person cornered, desperate. He sighed. "All right. Just for a minute." They approached, water splashing under their shoes. The woman's eyes darted to Ethan, quickly scanning him from head to toe. Her gaze lingered on his soaked shirt, his cheap tie, the little girl by his side. She seemed unimpressed. "Do you know anything about cars?" she asked sharply, her voice clipped and impatient. "Because I've been standing here for 20 minutes, and I don't have time for this." Ethan crouched to inspect the tire, ignoring the bite in her tone. "Yeah, looks like a puncture." "Spare tire in the trunk?" She folded her arms, sighing with exasperation. "Obviously, but I don't exactly have the time or the shoes for this." Ethan nodded. "I'll take care of it." Lily crouched beside him, her eyes wide with curiosity. "Daddy can fix anything," she whispered, as though it were a secret charm that could change the world. The woman arched an eyebrow, then stepped aside, arms crossed tightly. Ethan rolled up his sleeves and went to work. The tools were pristine, never used. He loosened the bolts with steady hands, his movements practiced. Rain plastered his hair to his forehead, streaked down his temples. But he didn't waver. The woman watched, her initial annoyance slowly giving way to something else. His focus was absolute, his strength precise, yet careful. He wasn't just fumbling like a good Samaritan trying to play hero. He knew what he was doing. "You've done this before," she remarked, her tone softening despite herself. Ethan smirked faintly. "A few times. Comes with the territory of driving on a budget." She tilted her head, studying him. "And what exactly do you do?" "Mechanic?" "Engineer," Ethan replied without looking up. "At least I was. Haven't exactly been in the game for a while." Something flickered in her eyes at that word engineer. She masked it quickly with another sigh. "Well, if you finish this quickly." I'll make sure you're compensated. Ethan's jaw tightened. He didn't answer, just kept working. 10 minutes later, the new tire was in place. He wiped his hands on his already soaked shirt and stood. You're good to go. The woman glanced at her watch, then at him. Thanks. She reached into her purse, pulling out a crisp $100 bill. Ethan shook his head. Don't need it. Just drive safe. For the first time since they'd met, her expression faltered. She wasn't used to being refused. She looked at him as if trying to fit him into a category, but couldn't. There was pride in his posture, weariness in his eyes, and something unshakably honest in the way he stood there in the rain with his daughter clinging to his hand. What's your name? She asked suddenly. Ethan, he replied. Ethan Carter. She nodded slowly, her gaze lingering on him. Then she slid into the driver's seat and started the engine. Without another word, the Mercedes glided away, leaving only the spray of water in its wake. Ethan exhaled heavily, his body sagging with the weight of lost time. He glanced at his watch and felt his stomach drop. The interview had started 20 minutes ago. Daddy, Lily said softly, her small voice trembling. Are we too late? He forced a smile that didn't reach his eyes. We'll try anyway. Hand in hand, they hurried through the rain. Ethan's mind torn between regret and resignation. But somewhere in the back of his thoughts, the image of the blonde woman lingered. He didn't know her name, didn't know her story. All he knew was that she had looked at him differently in that last moment, as though she'd seen something she hadn't expected. Ethan arrived at the glass skyscraper drenched and out of breath. The lobby was vast, polished marble floors gleaming under bright lights, businessmen and women moving briskly with umbrellas tucked under their arms. At the reception desk, he announced his name, hoping against hope that he still had a chance. The receptionist gave him a sympathetic look. I'm sorry, Mr. Carter. The panel concluded the interviews 15 minutes ago. The words hit harder than he expected. He swallowed, nodding slowly. I understand, he murmured. He turned away, Lily's hand gripping his tighter. She looked up at him, her eyes full of something he didn't want to see pity. Daddy, she whispered, tugging on his sleeve. From her school bag, she pulled out a folded piece of paper and pressed it into his hand. He opened it. In the shaky handwriting of a child were the words, My daddy is my hero. A stick figure drawing showed him standing tall with her beside him. Ethan's throat tightened. He crouched, hugging her close. Thank you, Lily. As they walked back into the storm, a sleek black Mercedes turned into the parking garage beneath the same building. From behind the tinted glass, Olivia Sterling, CEO of Sterling Technologies, watched them disappear into the rain. Her lips parted as if she might call out, but she didn't. Instead, she sat there for a long moment, thinking about the man who had just walked away from her without asking for anything in return. The rain did not let up. It grew finer and colder, needling through Ethan's shirt as he stepped back onto the sidewalk with Lily. The skyscraper behind him towered like a verdict. He thumbed his phone awake. 2 missed calls from an unknown number. A voicemail from the recruiter, whose voice managed to sound both apologetic and bored. Hi, Ethan, just circling back. We ended up moving forward with another candidate. But we'll, keep your resume on file. Best of luck. Best of luck. He stared at the words on the screen as if they were written to someone else. Lily squeezed his hand again, and he forced air into his lungs. Everything okay, Daddy? He crouched so they were eye level. We didn't get this one, he said gently. But we're okay. We always figure it out, right? She nodded in a small, brave way that hurt him more than the rejection. They caught the green line back toward Jamaica Plain, then a bus that shuddered and wheezed like an elderly dragon. Ethan watched raindrops chase each other down the window and counted out the remaining bills in his wallet. Rent was due in 9 days. The car needed brakes. Lily had outgrown her sneakers last week. When they reached their apartment, a third-floor walk-up that smelled faintly of brass polish and boiled cabbage, the mailbox held a reminder from the landlord. Friendly notice. It said, in a font that did not look friendly. Ethan palmed the envelope and slipped it under a stack of school flyers. Before Lily could see it, he made grilled cheese for dinner, 2 triangles for Lily and 1 for himself. Then walked her to Miss Danbury's, the retired school teacher on their floor, who babysat in the evenings for a few dollars and a never-ending supply of board games. "You working tonight, Mr. Carter?" Miss Danbury asked, peering at him over the chain lock with wise blue eyes. "Yeah," he said. "The cafe." "Of course." She gave Lily a conspiratorial wink. "You and I have a rematch." "Don't think I forgot who beat me last time." Lily giggled. "I'm bringing the purple dice." Ethan kissed his daughter's forehead, whispered, "Love you, be good," then took the stairs 2 at a time. The rain had gentled to mist, turning the streetlights into soft halos by the time he reached Harbor and Oak, the cafe on the corner with steamed windows and a wooden bell that clacked when the door opened. "Carter," called Reuben, the owner, a broad-shouldered man with salt and pepper hair and a perpetual dish towel over one shoulder. "You're a lifesaver." Jenna called in with a migraine. "I got it," Ethan said, slipping behind the counter, tying on an apron. The familiar rhythm steadied him. Grinding beans, tamping the portafilter, the hiss of milk, the clink of cups. He liked the way coffee turned strangers into less of strangers. He liked watching the storm beat on coats and then dissolve under the cafe's warm lights. By 7 o'clock, the rush had thinned to a gentle hum. A pair of grad students argued about a paper on machine ethics. A mother soothed a fussy toddler with a muffin top. 2 contractors in neon vests laughed at something on a phone. Ethan moved among them with quiet, unassuming grace. The bell clacked. He glanced up. The woman from the Mercedes stepped in, carrying the weather with her in a sheen across her hair and lapels. But there was no frenzy now. She was composed, a study in controlled velocity. Platinum blonde waves dried to a sleek spill, a camel trench cinched at the waist, a watch whose face caught the light like a coin. She paused just inside, eyes adjusting, and scanned the room in the way people do when they are used to deciding things. Ethan's chest ticked once. A small, startled staccato. He hadn't expected to see her again. Hadn't expected to want to. He schooled his features and finished pouring a flat white for the grad student. She approached the counter. Up close, her face had the kind of symmetry that cameras loved, animated by a concentration that made her seem taller than she was. For a heartbeat, she didn't seem to recognize him. Then her gaze clicked, and something unreadable passed through her. "You," she said simply. "Me," he said. "Welcome to Harbor and Oak." A corner of her mouth lifted. "Do you have single-origin Ethiopia?" "We do," he said. "Guji. Floral. A little bergamot." Her eyes warmed by a degree. "Pour over, please." He set the kettle, rinsed the filter, weighed the grounds. She watched his hands with the same intentness with which she had watched him change her tire. When the first bloom bled dark and fragrant through the filter, she leaned in just enough that it felt like a secret. "You didn't take my money," she said. "I didn't help for money," he replied, and kept the rest because that's not how my day works. Because I didn't want to feel like a transaction to himself. She let the silence hold for a moment, then said, "Olivia." He glanced up. "Nice to meet you." "Olivia. Olivia Sterling." She said it without flourish, but the last name landed in the room with a faint metallic ring, like a dropped key. Ethan's brain caught up a second later. Sterling Technologies. The silver logo he'd seen on shuttle buses and sleek laptop lids. The company in the news, for an AI-powered, power grid monitoring platform that had rolled out across half the Northeast. He passed her the cup. "I've heard of you, so I gathered," she said dryly, and took a sip. Whatever she tasted pleased her. It softened her mouth. "And you're Ethan Carter." "Correct," "You missed something important today," she said, as casually as if they were discussing weather. He laughed once, a low exhale. "Word travels. Your shirt told me. Also, your eyes." She set the cup down. "What was the role?" "Senior field engineer." "Where?" "A place that starts with an S, ends with, 'We'll keep your resume on file.'" He flicked a glance at her. "It's fine." "Is it?" "No," he admitted, "but it will be." A man in a Red Sox cap stepped to the counter, and Ethan drifted away to pull an espresso, to ring up a lemon bar, to refill a water carafe. When he returned, Olivia had commandeered a corner table by the window. A folder sat in front of her, its spine embossed in a muted silver O. She gestured to the seat across from her. "Sit with me," she said. It wasn't a request based on hierarchy. It was one based on the inarguable fact that she had already decided. "I'm working," he said, glancing at Reuben. "Go." Reuben waved, like a man who understood opportunity when it stood at his register in a camel coat. Ethan slid into the chair. The folder in front of Olivia held a schematic power distribution nodes, data ingestion pipelines, boxes labeled with acronyms, arrows with latencies in milliseconds. On top of it lay a napkin and a pen. She turned the folder so it faced him. "Pretend you're consulting for a large metropolitan grid," she said. "Sensor noise has spiked in the last 36 hours, and our anomaly detector is throwing false positives, causing unnecessary load shedding. We can't replicate the issue in staging. And our customers are one bad decision away from mutiny. What do you check first?" The cafe fell away. It always did when a machine asked him to listen. He leaned in. "I'd start with the basics. Look at the raw stream before it hits your feature. Engineering. Verify the noise isn't coming from a miscalibrated subset of sensors. If the spike clusters geographically, we might be dealing with weather amplification or an RF interference zone." She made a mark on the napkin. "And if it's not the hardware? Updated a dependency recently?" he asked. "Even a minor version bump can shift floating point behavior. I've seen a JSON parser tweak default coercion and wreck an entire detection pipeline." Her mouth flashed with a quick blink of approval. "Go on, then drift. Has your data distribution shifted? Energy usage changes with a cold snap. If your model wasn't retrained with the new slice, your thresholding will be off. Short-term fix. Adaptive thresholds per region, fed by a rolling window median absolute deviation instead of static cutoffs." He tapped the schematic. "Long-term. Build a shadow model that monitors the monitor. If both alarm and the real-time variance stays elevated, that's a true positive. If the shadow says calm while the primary screams, you've got a pipeline bug." She watched him while he spoke, but not just his words, watched his posture, the way he used the pen to anchor the air, the way he kept glancing up to see if she was with him. He didn't perform. He explained. The difference stirred something like respect. "What's your background?" she asked. "Mechanical engineering," he said. "Systems integration. I used to build predictive maintenance tools for manufacturing lines before." He stopped. "Before what?" "My wife got sick," he said quietly. "Lily was too. I left a job that traveled every other week and took what I could find. After she died, I took what I could keep." Olivia sat back, the edges of her expression turning inward. She wasn't good at small condolences, and knew better than to offer one. Instead, she said, "You changed my tire in a storm and refused a $100 bill. Why?" He met her eyes. "Because it needed doing." The toddler across the room began to fuss again, the sound scalloping the air. Without looking away from Olivia, Ethan reached for a napkin and slid it across the counter toward the mother, who smiled her thanks. When he glanced back, Olivia's head had tipped, as if noting a datum that fit a model she was building. "Tell me what you do with a team that resents you for being hired from outside," she said softly. "Smart people, defensive people. People who think the system is theirs." "I'd learn how it got to be theirs," he said. Ask what they're proud of, not what they broke. Start by shipping small fixes that remove their pain. Give credit so loudly they get tired of hearing their own names. And when we argue, and we will, I'll bring data and a willingness to be wrong, but I won't let fear set product direction. A small silence settled. The street outside was a smeared watercolor of headlights and umbrellas. Inside, the cafe smelled of orange peel and cinnamon. Olivia placed the pen on the napkin and folded her hands. A gesture so precise it could have been rehearsed. "I have a problem," she said. "You just described it without seeing it." She tapped the schematic once. "And you didn't ask me about salary, title, or whether there's a parking spot with your name on it." "I don't have a car," he said. That earned a laugh, genuine, unguarded. It changed her face completely. She seemed for a second like a woman who had once missed an important thing because she had stopped to do the right thing. Then the moment closed, and the CEO returned, the one who made impossible calls by noon and defended them until midnight. "Come tomorrow," she said. 8:30. Sterling Technologies, Seaport. Ask for me. I want you to meet a team called Atlas. Atlas, he repeated. They keep the grid from falling off our shoulders. A thread of wryness. Sometimes they think they're the only ones who can. He hesitated. "I have Lily." "Bring her." Olivia's eyes softened. "We have a family room, and people who actually like Legos more than code. She can stay there for a few hours, or if you prefer, I can send a car to pick her up after school and take her to our child space on the 7th floor. If any of that is too much, say so. I'm offering options, not leverage." He studied her. The offer wasn't pity. It was infrastructure. She had learned how to build systems around the truths that didn't move. "Okay," he said. "I'll come." She slid a card across the table. It was heavier than it looked, the silver logo catching even the cafe's dim light. Olivia Sterling, Chief Executive Officer. Below that, a number that would be answered on the first ring. He took the card, then flipped it, noticing a line written in her brisk, slanted hand. "You didn't lose a job today. You found me." He looked up, startled, and saw her watching his reaction with the smallest tilt of challenge. "Is that how you write to all the strangers who change your tires?" he asked. "I don't have that many strangers," she said, "and tires aren't what you changed." "What did I change?" "You reminded me," she said, rising, slipping her coat back onto her shoulders. "That competence without character is expensive. See you at 8:30. She left in a wash of cold air and wet streetlight, the bell clacking once behind her. For a few seconds Ethan remained where he was, the card weighty between his fingers, the napkin roadmap of a problem he could not stop wanting to solve. "Carter." Reuben called softly from the counter, as if speaking too loudly might break the spell. "You okay?" Ethan stood. He felt like a man who had stepped off a curb expecting asphalt and found, to his surprise, a staircase. "Yeah," he said. "I think so." He finished the shift with a buoyancy he hadn't felt in months. When he picked up Lily, she was sleepy and smug after beating Miss Danbury at a game involving 27 rules that seemed to change every turn. "Guess what?" he told her, as they climbed the stairs. "You learned how to make a unicorn latte. Close. I met someone who might give me a chance to do the work I'm good at. Is she nice?" He thought of Olivia at the counter, the way she had said bring her without blinking. "She's fair," he said. "And she's not afraid of weather." Lily considered this gravely, then nodded, as if that were all anyone needed to know. Later, after she slept, he stood by the window and looked out at the city wreathed in mist. He tried not to picture outcomes. He tried not to bargain with ghosts. Instead, he remembered how it felt when the problem met his mind and clicked, that bright, clean joining like two gears meshing exactly where they should. On the small kitchen table, Olivia's card gleamed beside the landlord's reminder. He put his hand over both, as if he could hold them in the same world, and whispered into the quiet. 8:30. The clock on the stove rolled past midnight. The storm that had started his day at a run finally wandered off into the harbor. Somewhere across town, in a penthouse whose windows turned rain into silver strings, Olivia sat alone at a long table, a second cup of Gucci half drunk, the napkin with Ethan's notes folded into her folder. She replayed the day not as a sequence of meetings and numbers, but as a sequence of choices. The moment he had crouched by her tire, the moment he had refused her money, the moment he had said start with the basics. She had built a career on betting on signals others ignored. Tonight, against the tired advice of committees and the grim arithmetic of quarterly forecasts, she had placed a bet on a man who made grilled cheese and watches for diaper bags and says I don't have a car like a punchline he refuses to be embarrassed by. In the morning, Atlas would test him. They would sharpen themselves on him like a blade, and he would either cut true or he would not. Either way, she thought, lifting the cup to her lips. The grid was not the only thing at risk of losing power or gaining it. She smiled, a small private thing. 8:30. The morning light over Boston Harbor was a pale wash of silver when Ethan stepped into the lobby of Sterling Technologies. The building itself seemed to hum with authority. Glass walls that reflected the city skyline, chrome accents, and a rotating globe suspended above the entrance, its countenance glowing faintly. He wore his best shirt, the one without frayed cuffs, and a freshly ironed pair of slacks. His shoes had been polished until the worn leather gleamed. Beside him, Lily clutched his hand, her backpack bouncing as she craned her neck to take in the towering atrium. "Daddy, it looks like a spaceship," she whispered. Ethan smiled faintly. "That's because people here build things that keep the lights on." Literally. At the reception desk, a young woman with sleek hair and a headset smiled politely. "Welcome to Sterling Technologies. May I help you?" "Ethan Carter," he said, trying to keep his voice steady. "I'm here to see Olivia Sterling." The woman's expression shifted almost imperceptibly. A beat of surprise, then swift professionalism. "Of course, Mr. Carter. She's expecting you." A few minutes later, a tall man in a fitted gray suit appeared, his steps clipped and efficient. He looked Ethan over in a single sweep shirt. Shoes. Lily, before offering a handshake that was more measurement than greeting. "Mr. Carter, I'm Daniel Hurst, Chief Operating Officer. Miss Sterling asked me to escort you upstairs." Ethan shook his hand, sensing the weight of appraisal. Lily stuck close to his side. The elevator doors whispered open, carrying them to the 7th floor. The space was bright and open, filled with glass-walled conference rooms and long stretches of workstations cluttered with monitors, schematics, and half-empty coffee cups. Screens displayed real-time grids pulsing with color-coded data. "This," Hurst said, sweeping a hand toward the floor, "is Atlas, the team that keeps our infrastructure from collapsing into chaos." As they walked past rows of engineers, Ethan felt their eyes on him. Quick glances, raised brows, murmurs that stopped just as he looked their way. He caught fragments. "That's him? The cafe guy? Olivia's charity project?" Hurst guided him into a glass-walled conference room where Olivia waited. Standing at the head of the table, with a tablet in hand, she wore a tailored navy dress, her platinum blonde hair falling in soft waves. Her eyes warmed when they landed on Lily, then sharpened with focus as she turned to Ethan. "Right on time," she said. Ethan exhaled softly. "Wouldn't miss it." Lily peered around the sleek room, then tugged Olivia's sleeve shyly. "Do you have Legos?" Olivia crouched to her level, her polished veneer softening. "We do, actually, right down the hall." She glanced toward a young woman passing by. "Maya, could you show Lily to the family space?" The woman knelt with a friendly smile. "Come on. I'll show you the Lego castle." Lily hesitated, then looked at Ethan. He nodded, and she scampered off with Maya, her laughter trailing behind her. Olivia straightened. "Now we can talk." The meeting began with half a dozen senior engineers filling the room. Their expressions ranged from skepticism to thinly veiled hostility. They introduced themselves tersely. Raj, Data Systems Lead. Carla, Infrastructure Chief. Mitchell, Anomaly Detection Architect. Each name came with a handshake that felt more like a test. Olivia gestured toward Ethan. "This is Ethan Carter. He'll be consulting with Atlas for the next few weeks." "Consulting?" Carla arched a brow. "From where? I didn't see his resume." "You didn't," Olivia said coolly. "I asked him here personally." The room shifted, whispers tightening. Raj leaned forward. "With respect, Miss Sterling, we're already stretched thin. Breaking in a new hire without context is not optimal." Olivia's gaze flicked to him, sharp as a scalpel. "Which is why he's not a hire. He's a test. If he fails, it's on me. If he succeeds, it's on all of us." She looked at Ethan. "Mr. Carter, the floor is yours." For a moment, silence pressed on him like a weight. He could feel every eye, every ounce of doubt. He cleared his throat. "I'm not here to waste anyone's time," he began. "You've built something extraordinary keeping a power grid. This complex stable is no small feat. I know you don't need someone walking in from the outside telling you how to do your jobs. But I also know what it feels like to be in the middle of a storm, with everyone waiting for you to fail. I've been there, so if you let me, I'll do what I do best. Listen first, and fix what's broken second." The words hung in the air. Mitchell leaned back, unimpressed. "Fine. Let's see what the mechanics got." The next hours were a gauntlet. They threw problems at him. Data inconsistencies, false positives, unexplained downtime. On a monitoring node, each time, Ethan asked questions no one expected. What changed yesterday? Which systems weren't noisy 6 months ago? Who's the one person no one has asked yet? He traced a data leak to a single outdated library version. He spotted an error in a model threshold by noticing a pattern in the raw logs. By noon, he had solved 3 issues that had plagued the team for weeks, not with genius, but with patience and persistence. Still, the atmosphere remained frosty. Carla muttered to Raj, loud enough for Ethan to hear, "Flukes don't make him one of us." Ethan kept his head down, choosing not to respond. At lunch, he found Lily in the family space, proudly showing Maya a Lego tower taller than her head. She ran to him, arms around his waist. "Daddy, did you fix something?" He chuckled. "A few things." Her smile gave him strength. That afternoon, Olivia summoned him to her office. The room overlooked the harbor, the city unfolding like a living circuit board beyond the glass. "You made progress," she said. Not a question, but a statement. "I tried," Ethan replied. She studied him. They don't like outsiders, especially not ones who bypass the usual process. They'll test you harder than anyone else. "I know," he said quietly. "And I don't blame them." Her gaze softened, but only slightly. "Don't mistake their silence for disinterest. They're watching, waiting to see if you burn out or stand your ground." He nodded. "I'll stand." Something flickered in her eyes. Then an acknowledgement, perhaps even admiration. As the day ended, Ethan gathered Lily and stepped back into the cool evening. The skyline glowed orange with sunset, and for the first time in months, hope warmed his chest. But as they walked to the bus stop, he didn't notice the shadow of Mitchell lingering by the revolving doors, phone pressed to his ear. His words were low, conspiratorial. "Yeah, he's here. And Olivia's protecting him. We'll see how long that lasts." The wheels of conflict had begun to turn. Boston, New Haven, Providence, all flickered with amber alerts. Entire neighborhoods risked losing power if the anomalies weren't stabilized within hours. Ethan sat near the far end of the table, his laptop open, logs streaming down the screen like a waterfall. He could feel the weight of stares on his back, some hostile, some curious. Lily was downstairs in the family space, blissfully unaware of the storm brewing above. At the head of the table, Olivia stood tall, her voice clipped and firm. We're one misstep away from a blackout affecting 3 million customers. We need answers. Carla, the infrastructure chief, leaned forward. Our anomaly detector is overwhelmed. We're shedding load unnecessarily. But if we disable it, we risk cascading failures. We have to play safe. Playing safe is killing us. Raj muttered. Every false alarm erodes customer trust. Utilities are threatening lawsuits. Mitchell, arms crossed, cut in sharply. What we need is to roll back the last update. Go back to static thresholds. It may be crude, but it's predictable. Ethan looked up from his laptop. That's a mistake. Every head turned. Mitchell's eyes narrowed. Excuse me? Static thresholds won't solve this, Ethan said evenly. The noise is drifting. You'll either trip too early or miss the real failures entirely. You'll buy a few hours of calm, and then the system will collapse harder. Mitchell scoffed. And what, Carter? You think you've got a magic wand? I think, Ethan replied, pushing the laptop forward so the screen filled with graphs. I've got a better model. He stood, the room's attention reluctantly following. I've been running a shadow detector for the past 10 days. It tracks variance across nodes, adapts thresholds regionally instead of globally. When I overlay it against the current system, he tapped a key, and the wall display shifted, showing two lines, one jagged, spiking with false positives, the other steady, flagging only genuine anomalies. A murmur rippled across the room. Even Carla leaned closer. This, Ethan said, would cut false positives by 70%, instantly. And it doesn't require shutting down the detector or rolling back updates. We can deploy it tonight. Unproven, Mitchell snapped. Experimental code, written by someone who hasn't even been here a month. Raj frowned, torn. The math checks out, though. Olivia raised a hand, silencing the arguments. Her eyes locked on Ethan. You're saying you can stabilize this by tonight? Yes, Ethan said without hesitation. If we deploy the adaptive thresholds across the northeast sector now, we'll see results within an hour. Mitchell slammed his palm against the table. This is reckless. If his patch misfires, we won't just lose credibility, we'll lose the grid. The room fractured into voices, shouts of agreement, mutters of dissent. The clatter of keyboards as some engineers pulled up his code in real time. Olivia stood motionless, watching Ethan. Mr. Carter, she said finally, her tone coldly precise. What happens if you're wrong? Ethan met her gaze steadily. If I'm wrong, you fire me. You blame me. But if I'm right, you save the grid. And buy Atlas the credibility it's been bleeding for months. The silence after those words was a living thing. Carla cleared her throat. With respect, Miss Sterling, if we don't act, we're going to watch the system spiral. I hate to admit it, but his model looks solid. Mitchell's voice was acid. You're seriously considering this? Trusting an outsider over your own architect? Ethan turned to him, calm but unflinching. I'm not here to take credit. I'm here because your system is breaking, and people's lives depend on it. You want to hate me? Fine. But don't punish the grid for it. The room fell quiet again. Olivia's jaw flexed, her hands folded in front of her. For a moment, she looked less like a CEO and more like a woman balancing a scale with consequences on both sides. Then she spoke. Deploy it. The word dropped like a hammer. Mitchell shot to his feet. Olivia, her eyes cut to him, steel sharp. That's Miss Sterling to you. Sit down. The room froze. Mitchell's mouth opened, closed. Then he dropped into his chair. Fury, radiating from him. Olivia turned to Ethan. You have 1 hour. Make it count. The next 60 minutes were a blur. Engineers scrambled. Commands flying across terminals. Pipelines being rerouted. Nodes recalibrated. Ethan moved among them, guiding, adjusting, answering questions with steady patience. At one point, he had 3 people gathered around his screen, watching as he tweaked parameters and explained his logic in plain language. When the adaptive model finally went live, the wall display flickered. Red alerts began to fade. The jagged lines smoothed, stabilizing, while genuine anomalies stood out like clean signals against static. False positives down 68%, Raj breathed. 72. Carla corrected, her voice tinged with awe. The room erupted not in cheers, but in an exhale of collective relief. Engineers leaned back in their chairs, some clapping Ethan on the shoulder, others shaking their heads in disbelief. Only Mitchell sat rigid, his jaw locked, his glare fixed on Ethan as though he'd committed a crime. Olivia stepped forward, her heels clicking softly against the polished floor. She studied the stabilized grid, then turned to Ethan. "You bought us breathing room." Ethan wiped his brow, his shirt clinging with sweat. "Breathing room's a start. We'll need to retrain the models long-term. But for tonight, the lights stay on." For the first time since he'd entered Sterling Technologies, the room regarded him not as an intruder, but as one of them. Even Carla extended a hand. Not bad for a mechanic. He shook it, smiling faintly, but across the table, Mitchell's glare only deepened. He tapped something into his phone under the desk, his lips curling into the faintest shadow of a smirk. Later that evening, Olivia found Ethan in the quiet of the observation deck, overlooking the harbor. The city glittered below, alive and steady with power. "You realize," she said, standing beside him, "that you just made half this floor both grateful and furious." Ethan chuckled tiredly. "Story of my life." She glanced at him, her expression softer now. "You took a risk. A big one. So did you," he replied. "You put your reputation on the line for someone you barely know." Her lips curved in a small smile. "Maybe I know more than you think." For a long moment they stood in silence, the hum of the city filling the air. Something unspoken flickered between them, fragile but undeniable. Then Olivia's phone buzzed. She glanced at the screen, her expression tightening. "Board meeting tomorrow morning. They'll want answers, and some of them will want your head." Ethan nodded, unsurprised. "Let them. I'll show them the data." Her gaze lingered on him, thoughtful and conflicted. "Get some rest, Ethan. Tomorrow will be a different kind of battle." As she walked away, Ethan looked out at the harbor lights, wondering if he had finally stepped into the life he'd been chasing or into a storm even fiercer than before. Far below, in the shadows of the city, Mitchell met with a man in a silver car. Their words were muffled, but the intent was clear. The battle inside Sterling Technologies had only just begun. The storm had passed, but inside Sterling Technologies, a darker tension loomed. Midnight found the Atlas floor half empty, the glow of monitors the only light. Ethan lingered at his station, scanning logs, fingers tapping steadily across the keyboard. He should have gone home hours ago. Lily dozed on the sofa in the family space, curled up in a blanket, her sketchpad on the floor beside her. But Ethan couldn't rest. The adaptive model was holding. Yet something gnawed at him. A series of anomalies blinked on his screen, subtle, irregular, too perfect. Not noise. Not random. Engineered. Ethan leaned closer, tracing the data streams. Nodes in the Providence sector were reporting impossible fluctuations, each spike carefully crafted to mimic genuine failures. It was sabotage, written in code. He saved the logs, heart hammering. Only a handful of people had the access level to inject signals at this layer. And one name rose in his mind, like a shadow. Mitchell. A noise behind him made him glance back. Olivia stood in the doorway, her platinum hair loose over her shoulders. A trench coat draped across her arm. She looked tired, but her eyes sharpened when she saw his expression. "You're still here. So are you," Ethan replied, turning the screen toward her. "Look at this." She stepped closer, scanning the anomalies. Her brows knit. "That doesn't look random." "It's not," Ethan said quietly. Someone's feeding the detector synthetic data. If this spreads, it'll trigger a cascade blackouts from Boston to Albany. Her voice dropped. Sabotage? He nodded. And I think I know who. Olivia's gaze hardened. Mitchell. Ethan hesitated. You said it. Not me. She exhaled sharply, pacing. The board's been restless. Some want me out. Replaced with someone more controllable. If Mitchell proves me incompetent, they get their excuse. Then we stop him, Ethan said simply. The next hours blurred into urgency. Ethan built a diagnostic filter, combing through thousands of signals, isolating those with digital fingerprints, tiny timing discrepancies invisible to casual analysis. Olivia worked beside him, not as a CEO, but as a partner. Her hands quick on the keyboard, her mind sharp. At 2 a.m., they caught it. A packet injected from an internal credential, routed through a disguised server. The origin traced back to Mitchell's account. Olivia stared at the evidence, fury trembling beneath her composure. He tried to sink my company to save his pride. Ethan's jaw tightened, and risked millions of people losing power. Before she could answer, a soft voice interrupted them. Daddy? They turned. Lily stood in the doorway, rubbing her eyes. Blanket trailing behind her, Ethan knelt. Hey, sweetheart. Couldn't sleep. She shook her head. I dreamed the lights went out. He hugged her close, then looked at Olivia. She deserves better than this world of shadows and sabotage. Olivia's eyes softened at the sight, then hardened again with resolve. Then let's make sure the lights stay on. At dawn, the sabotage escalated. Whole clusters flickered red, false anomalies flooding the dashboards. Engineers rushed in, panic swelling. Carla barked orders. Raj scrambled over logs. Alarms filled the room like sirens. Amid the chaos, Mitchell strode in, feigning shock. What happened? Your detector's failing, Carla snapped. Mitchell raised his voice, dramatic. I warned you. Rolling back would have prevented this. Olivia, you gambled on him, he pointed at Ethan. And now Atlas is burning. Eyes turned to Olivia, the room buzzing with doubt. Ethan stepped forward, his voice steady. It's not the detector. It's injected noise. Look at the packet signatures. He pulled up the logs on the central screen. See the timing? Perfect intervals. Real failures don't behave like this. Raj frowned, scanning. He's right. These are synthetic. Murmurs rippled. Someone muttered. But who would? Ethan overrode the feed, displaying the trace. Mitchell's credentials glowed on the screen like a brand. The room went silent. Mitchell's face drained of color, then flushed with rage. That's a setup. Fabricated. Olivia's voice cut through. Steel and fire. Stop. The evidence is conclusive. You sabotaged Atlas, risked millions of lives, and tried to undermine this company for your own gain. Mitchell sneered. You'll never prove it in court. The board will see everything, she snapped. She gestured to security. 2 guards stepped forward. Escort him out. Mitchell struggled, shouting curses, but the room remained silent, watching as he was dragged away. Only when the doors closed did Olivia turn back to Ethan. Her composure cracked just slightly. Relief mingling with fury. You saved us. Again, Ethan shook his head. We saved it. Together. Later, when the grid stabilized and the engineers slumped in exhaustion, Ethan found Lily asleep again, curled on a chair, clutching her sketchpad. On the page was a child's drawing. Her father standing tall, Olivia beside him, both holding up a glowing city skyline. Above them in shaky letters, My heroes. Olivia saw it, her breath catching. She looked at Ethan, something unspoken, flickering in her eyes a recognition, perhaps even longing. You realize, she said softly, you've made enemies tonight. Mitchell wasn't acting alone. Others will come for you. Ethan smiled tiredly. That's fine. I've been underestimated my whole life. He glanced at Lily. But I won't be underestimated as her father. Olivia's expression softened. She touched his arm lightly, a rare gesture of warmth. You don't have to fight alone anymore. For a moment, the storm between them calmed. The city outside glowed, steady, alive, because one single dad had chosen to stop, to help, to fight. And somewhere deep in Olivia's guarded heart, the thought took root. Perhaps this wasn't just about saving a grid. Perhaps it was about saving each other. The boardroom at Sterling Technologies was cold and austere, its long mahogany table polished to a mirror sheen. 12 directors sat in a crescent, their faces impassive, eyes sharp as scalpels. Olivia stood at the head of the table, every inch the CEO composed, poised platinum hair framing her face like a crown of steel. Beside her, Ethan adjusted his tie, the unfamiliar weight of a suit jacket pressing on his shoulders. He wasn't supposed to be here, at least, not in this room. But after the sabotage scandal, Olivia insisted. One director, a man with silver hair and a voice like gravel, leaned forward. Miss Sterling, this board has grave concerns. Your decision to bring in an unvetted outsider nearly cost this company its reputation. Why should we continue to trust your judgment? Olivia's gaze flicked to Ethan, then back. Because that outsider saved this company when our own systems failed, twice. While others plotted to destabilize us, he stood his ground and protected the grid. Without him, we'd be in the dark, literally. Murmurs rippled around the table. Another director, a woman with rimless glasses, raised a brow. That may be true, but what guarantee do we have this? Carter is more than a temporary fix. Ethan straightened, surprising even himself with the steadiness of his voice. You don't, he said plainly. Not yet. All I can offer is what I've always offered. Work done honestly. Problems solved carefully. People treated with respect. That's how grids survive and how companies endure. The room stilled. For a moment, he feared he had overstepped. Then Olivia's lips curved ever so slightly. The silver-haired director cleared his throat. Sterling Technologies cannot afford sentimentality, but results. He glanced at the reports in front of him, graphs glowing with stability. Results we cannot ignore. A vote followed, quiet and swift. When it concluded, Olivia's voice rang with finality. Effective immediately, Ethan Carter will serve as Director of Systems Resilience. Ethan blinked, stunned. Applause scattered through the room light. Cautious, but real. That evening, Ethan stood by the harbor, the city lights reflecting in the water. Lily darted around him, chasing pigeons, her laughter carrying on the wind. He still couldn't quite believe it, this new role. This recognition. For years, he'd been invisible. A man defined by loss and survival. Now, suddenly, he was seen. Behind him, footsteps clicked softly. Olivia joined him, hands in the pockets of a tailored white coat. Congratulations, she said. He smiled faintly. You didn't give them much of a choice. I didn't have to, she replied. You gave them proof. I only reminded them how to read it. They stood in companionable silence for a while, watching the ferries cross the dark water. Then Olivia's voice softened. Ethan, you've changed more than this company. You've changed me. He turned, surprised by the vulnerability in her eyes. The guarded CEO was gone. In her place stood a woman admitting something she rarely allowed herself. How? He asked gently. You reminded me, she said, that leadership isn't about power, it's about responsibility, about courage, and about people you'd risk everything to protect. Her gaze flicked to Lily, still twirling by the railing. She looks at you like you hung the moon. That kind of love. It makes me wonder what I've been chasing all these years. Ethan's throat tightened. Olivia, But before he could finish, Lily ran up, clutching a pigeon feather like treasure. Daddy, look. For good luck. She held it out, eyes sparkling. Then she turned to Olivia, shy but hopeful. "You can have half, if you want." Olivia knelt, accepting the feather as though it were a diamond. "Thank you, Lily. I think this is the best luck I've ever been given." Ethan watched them, something shifting deep inside. A possibility he hadn't dared dream of family, not just survival. Weeks later, the company buzzed with new energy. The sabotage scandal had faded, replaced by headlines praising Sterling Technologies for innovative grid stabilization. Ethan's adaptive model became industry standard, and his leadership of Atlas earned quiet respect from those who once doubted him. But the true transformation was quieter. Olivia stopped eating alone at her glass desk and started joining the team for lunch. She smiled more easily, asked more questions, listened with real intent, and more often than not, Ethan found her waiting by the family space, laughing at something Lily said, her posture no longer that of a distant executive, but of someone inching closer to belonging. One Friday evening, Olivia invited Ethan and Lily to dinner at her townhouse overlooking the Charles River. The space was modern, minimalist, but softened with warm lighting and the faint scent of rosemary. A table had been set with care 3 places, not 2. Lily gasped at the sight of the sparkling river beyond the windows. "It's like the stars fell in the water." Olivia laughed, a sound lighter than Ethan had ever heard. "Then tonight, we eat under the stars." The dinner was simple roast chicken, fresh bread, salad. But to Ethan, it felt like a feast. Conversation flowed easily. Lily's school adventures, Atlas's latest project, Olivia's childhood stories of sneaking into her father's workshop. The walls between them thinned with every laugh, every shared glance. After Lily excused herself to the sofa with her sketchpad, Olivia poured 2 glasses of wine and leaned across the table. Her eyes caught the candlelight, steady and intent. "You know," she said softly, "missing that interview might be the best thing that ever happened to you." Ethan chuckled, shaking his head. "Tell that to the man who thought his life ended that morning." She reached across, her hand brushing his. "That man found something more important than a job. He found a fight worth joining, and maybe someone worth standing beside." For a moment, the room held its breath. Ethan met her gaze, saw in it the strength of a woman who had carried empires and the softness of someone who wanted, finally, to lay down the armor. He covered her hand with his voice quiet. "Maybe we both did." Later that night, after Lily had fallen asleep on the sofa, Ethan helped carry her to a guest room Olivia had prepared. He tucked her in, brushed her hair from her face, and whispered, "Sweet dreams, my hero." When he stepped back into the living room, Olivia stood by the window, looking out at the city her company helped keep alive. She turned as he approached, her expression open, unguarded. "You've changed everything, Ethan," she said softly. "Not just here. Not just the grid. Me." He hesitated only a heartbeat before stepping closer. "Then, let's see what we can build together." The city lights shimmered behind them, steady and bright. For the first time in years, Ethan felt not like a man surviving the storm, but like a man finally stepping into the light with his daughter at his side, and someone new willing to walk beside him. The future stretched ahead, uncertain but alive. And as Olivia reached for his hand, Ethan knew one truth above all. Sometimes, losing an opportunity is the only way to find what truly matters: love, family, and the courage to begin again.